All right, so welcome to Studio 58A live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us wherever you are online from around the world. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your eyes. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and your comments so we can put them to our guest. And like how we have your attention, just do us the same favor we always ask. Share this video with a friend or 2 or 5,000 so we can have a very lively discussion. Now, it's one of the biggest scourges on humanity, human trafficking. And as small as Jamaica is, it's one of the country's biggest challenges. So often we see pictures circulating on the internet of young children, women, all types of people going missing. And we can't help but wonder, where are they? Have they fallen victim to the illicit trade in humans? The sad truth is that many of them have. But something is being done about it. We have a national task force against trafficking in persons. We have an anti-human trafficking unit in the constabulary force, and in the Ministry of Justice, we have a trafficking in persons secretariat. Which brings me to today's guest. We have in studio today manager of the trafficking in persons secretariat, Ms. Chenee Russell. She's here to shed some light on the human trafficking situation in Jamaica, and more importantly, all the efforts being taken to raise awareness and stop the crime. Welcome, Ms. Russell. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for
that
having
mic
me.
is not yours.
Oh.
This mic is yours. That's the one that's yours. All right. So let's just, not so long ago, we were down on the United States Department of State's watch list, but we have been moving up. We've been making a lot of moves. So give me an idea of where we were coming from and, where we are now and kind of what has been done in between then and now.
Right, correct. So we were upgraded in 2015, I believe, from Tier 2 watch list to Upper Tier 2. And that's a very good move for Jamaica because ever since 2015, we're still at Upper Tier 2. And our aim this year is to be Tier 1.
All right.
And so that report will be coming out this month, anytime now.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see if we have been upgraded or we're still at Tier 2. But the country has embarked on a number of initiatives. For example, in 2015, the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Unit within the Jamaica Constabulary Force launched Operation ID Fix, in which a number of persons were arrested and a number of victims were also rescued, and a number of Operation Prostitution rings were closed in St. Catherine, in Montego Bay.
All right. So we've been making a lot of moves, basically. We've been doing that. But give me an idea of the state of the crime in Jamaica. We're talking about, I like to, when you have visual aids like this, it's always good when you can show person and give them a visual appreciation of what we're talking about. But can you give us an idea of like a status update on what's going on in this country where this crime is concerned?
All right. So just to give you a status update. To date, we've rescued over 86 victims from human trafficking, and that's for a 9-year period from 2010, because that's when we would have started our massive record collection. So that's over 86 victims, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, because as we say, human trafficking is a hidden crime, and it is so imperceptible that a lot of persons see it and don't recognize it, or they see it or they just turn a blind eye. And so, as well as rescuing those 86 victims, we've had 6 convictions since the passing of the act in 2007. Just recently we had a conviction last month, which includes a child trafficking case.
Oh my God.
Right. And we also had one appeal, which is our first human trafficking appeal and the first appeal in the Caribbean as well. And that appeal the conviction was upheld. So that's good move for Jamaica.
So we're making some real big moves. And I guess for many persons, they want to know just how serious, the scope of it. Is it that, because like I said, you see these pictures of persons going missing all over the place. You see them on social media, you see the faces, you see so many things, and then you're just wondering to yourself, are these people really falling prey to this crime? I mean, what is the extent of the crime in the country? You know what I mean?
Right. So the extent of human trafficking, we like to distinguish it from missing persons.
Exactly.
A lot of times persons think that, once you're missing, you're a victim of human trafficking.
Because it almost feels like an easy correlation to make, or distinction to make.
Right. And the Jamaica Constabulary Force will tell you that the missing persons is different from trafficking persons. So they would have to do their investigation and confirm a case to be a human trafficking case. So until they can confirm a suspected case to be trafficking, they're just missing. So for example, you would have heard 2 persons would have went to Montego Bay in search of jobs. We can't confirm those cases to be human trafficking. But human trafficking is still a problem in Jamaica. It is so much a major problem that we have to be taking all these initiatives. For example, our prevention subcommittee have to embark on a wide range of initiatives, and more specifically child trafficking. For example, we rescued 6 victims last year of human trafficking, and 5 of those 6 victims were children. So that's the scope, to give you just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm trying not to get too depressed while I do this interview, but this information is really just disturbing. You know what I mean? I mean, how young children, what are we talking about? Ages like, less than 10 and 13, thereabouts?
Most times they're between 13 and 17. So for example, the recent conviction that we had, the child was 13 years old at the time she was exploited, and that was in 2015.
Oh boy. So what are some of the forms that the rings take? What are some of, insofar as providing, raising awareness and making sure persons can look out and spot some of these scams or some of these traps that they set? What are some of the ways in which they entrap people into these things?
Right. Okay. So a big one is job advertisements. We're all aware, or most persons should be aware, that a lot of times you will see an ad within the paper, or if it's on the internet or whatever medium it is. So for example, we always tell persons these are signs you can look out for, some red flags. So for example, if you see ladies or girls, females between the ages of 18 and 25 needed, no experience needed, no qualification needed, these are red flags. And what we like to say as well, if it seems too good to be true, it more than likely is too good to be true. So this is one of the forms in which human traffickers lure persons into trafficking. So that's one form. Another form is through social media. We're in the advent of technology and everybody's on social media nowadays. And traffickers sometimes befriend the persons on social media. And we know a lot of persons, they like to meet new people, but we always tell persons, do your due diligence, do your checks. Of course, we want to meet persons, but we'd like to know who is it that we're interacting with, because you do not want to be interacting with a criminal, and more so a human trafficker. So that's also one of the ways in which persons lure. So they will befriend you and you gain trust and you get comfortable, and then they strike. Meaning that they will invite you out, and before you know it, you go to a house and there are 4 men there, including women as well. And what we'd also like to tell persons, not only men are human traffickers, women are also involved. We've had cases in Jamaica where women have been convicted for human trafficking.
All right, so it's not just this one isn't male dominated by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
All right, we're already getting a couple of questions online. One of them, let me just, he's just asking what exactly is human trafficking. So I mean, this is social media and we have a range of audiences, so it is good to define the term so we can understand our frame of context in which we're talking about. Just go ahead and define human trafficking for me.
All right. So human trafficking is defined by law to mean the harboring, the transfer, the transportation, or recruitment or receipt of a person by means of threat, force, deception, or other means of coercion for exploitation. So we like to break it down into 3 elements. Human trafficking is defined by 1, the activity, which is harboring a person, the receipt of a person, the transportation of a person. And then 2, you have the means, and that is whether it's through deception, so through deceptive means, or it's through force. Sometimes it's through the person abuse of their power or the abuse of the vulnerability of a person. And simply put, the last element is the purpose, exploitation. Whether it is sexual exploitation or labor exploitation, whatever it is, it's for the purpose of exploitation. So that's human trafficking defined by the law. And what we call it, modern slavery in a nutshell.
Modern day slavery, All right, so I have a couple of questions. One from Vanessa Silvera. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for your question. She's saying, there's many questions actually. She says, do you have the numbers How many persons are arrested, rescued? How many prostitutions ring disrupted? How many police officers were charged? I mean, I would imagine it means how many charges were brought on.
Right.
But can you give us an idea of that kind of? I know you talked and touched on it, some of it earlier, but it's always good to rehash all the same. So go ahead and give me some of the figures in terms of some of the wins that you've had in there from the not-for-tips perspective.
All right. So on the top of my head, the Jamaica Constabulary Force will be more able to give you like exact figures because they are the ones that deals with the investigation as well as they are the ones that have the statistics. But we have our statistics here. I know, for example, we've had 6 convictions, as I said, since the passing of the act in 2007. We've rescued over 86 victims, and that's since 2010. And we've also done over 750 operations. That's the police. In terms of how many persons have been arrested, can't say that for sure right now at the moment since we've started doing our data collection. But as I said, we've also had 1 appeal, and that's in 2018.
All right. And Jerome Brown, thank you, Jerome, for your question. Man, he's asking, who do we report these activities to? Which raises a good issue of when you see something and it raises it sends up a red flag for you. You notice that some just don't look right in terms of maybe a child is in a location that it just doesn't look like that child should be there. Or you go somewhere and it just obviously screams that it's inappropriate for whoever is in here. It may be something off about the situation or something wrong. What do you do after that? Where do you go? Where do you report it to? What's your next move? What should the next move be?
All right. So your next move is to call the police. And we have the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Vice Squad within the Jamaica Constabulary Force, who is responsible for investigating all human trafficking cases in Jamaica. And that team is headed by DSP Carl Berry, which they are doing a phenomenal job in Jamaica. And so their numbers are, you can call 967-1389, or you can also call 922-3771. These are their straight line within the Jamaica Constabulary Force. As well as you can call 811 if you would like to remain anonymous. And you can also call 119 or the nearest police station. As well as our last number, you can also call 1-888, that's 888, PROTECT, and that's 776-8328. That's 1-888 PROTECT, and that's a toll-free line from a landline. That's also if you'd like to report child victims. So this number is for the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. As persons would have been aware, you have the Office of the Children's Registry, who they also have their line for reports of child abuse and child trafficking.
Wonderful. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There are lots of places you can call. There's a lot of places you can get in touch with. If you see something that's unusual, it just sticks out in your mind, call them, make a report, let the police worry about investigating and finding out what's going on. Or as long as it raises a red flag for you, trust your instincts. There could really be something wrong going on there. Jazeel Clark, thank you, Jazeel, for your comment. He's asking, where have you rescued them from? Which I guess is trying to understand where in Jamaica perhaps are the different locations maybe that you've found this kind of activity taking place.
All right. So I give you a recent case, which is the case of the Queen against Aston Alcock, which was just last month. He was sentenced. And we rescued the female from St. Anne. So she was made to dance in various nightclubs across the island, which included St. Anne and Mandeville. So that's one of the places in which we've rescued our victims from, as well as we've also had a forced begging case last year in 2018. That's the Queen against Kirk Allen. These victims were rescued from St. Catherine. We've also had cases from St. James, Montego Bay, where we've rescued victims as well. And these cases are currently before the courts.
Okay.
So these are just some of the places in which we've rescued persons.
Just when doing some research for this discussion before, one of the things I came across is that Jamaica is reported to be a destination country for women and persons essentially taken from other members of the country. Other parts of the world, rather. Some people say Dominican Republic, Russia, Eastern Europe, and Cuba. What information do you have about this, in the sense that do you find that there are victims from other countries that we have to get involved and try to help repatriate them or find ways to prosecute those involved, that kind of thing?
All right. So the United Nations on Office of Drugs and Crimes, they would have a list of countries right across the world, every country. So you're either ranked in a source country, or you're ranked as a destination country, or you're ranked as a transit country. So Jamaica is ranked as a source and a destination countries, meaning Jamaica is one of the places in which human traffickers can come and find victims a lot. So that's what we call source countries. And it's also a destination country where human traffickers tend to bring in victims. So for example, we've had Haitian victims here in Jamaica, Colombian, Chinese. So we've had to repatriate these victims to their country. So this is what Jamaica is ranked as, a destination and a source country. So it's very important to note that under our law, we're mandated to repatriate victims, not from Jamaica, so non-nationals. So for example, last year we had to repatriate a Chinese national to China at our expense.
Okay.
So that's what it means by Jamaica is a destination and source country
So
for
from
trafficking.
even as far away as China, we've seen victims involved in the trade.
Yes.
Wow. All right.
And our neighbors as well, for example, as I said, Haiti, Colombia, and other countries.
Now, you mentioned earlier about legislation being that has been used to prosecute cases. Talk to us about getting that legislation up and running and then utilizing it to put a stop to this crime in the various ways it has, you've gone about doing so.
Right. So we've passed the Trafficking in Persons Prevention, Suppression, and Punishment Act in 2007. And since the passing of that act, we've amended it twice. So we've amended it in 2013, and we also amended it in 2018. Major amendments includes a list of aggravating factors. So very important, within the act, the maximum penalty for human trafficking is 20 years. Which is commensurate to crimes such as rape and other sexual.
Excellent, outstanding. It should be more if you ask me, but I guess 20 is a good place to start.
I give you something else. It was 10 years before when we passed the act, and we increased it to 20 years in 2013. We also included a list of aggravating factors, which can see a person get a maximum of up to 30 years within prison. So if there is an aggravating factor, for example, if an explosive weapon was used, or if the victim is just a child, that's considered to be an aggravating factor. Or if the victim contracts, sexual transmitted disease, those are aggravating factors.
So mitigating factors that help the judge determine just how long he must last in prison.
Right, so the judge may give you an additional 10 years on the maximum penalty, which is 20 years. And recently, within 2018, we changed the law for trafficking cases to be tried by a judge alone.
What's the significance of that?
We no longer have to empanel a jury. So it's now tried by a judge alone. So for example, cases can move more swiftly through court because, that's another problem we have with the judicial system. And victims tend to get frustrated when their matters are right. And you would have imagined
drawn
that
out, you have to be relive the trauma each and every time you bring the case up, and if it's drawing on long, you might just lose interest and decide, I'm just going to move on with my life and just, go about my business, try to rebuild my life in whatever way.
Exactly. And worse if the victim is a non-national.
Exactly. So getting them to come back and forth is in itself a problem.
Right.
You mentioned something interesting a while ago about forced begging. Why? Because it stuck out to me because typically, one of the first things you tend to think is sexual exploitation. But talk to me about that forced begging case and what, the features of it, basically.
All right, so one of the factors in which we tell persons of is that trafficking is not limited to sexual exploitation. A lot of persons believe that human trafficking is equated to sexual exploitation. Not true, that's a myth. We have various forms of trafficking, and forced begging is one form of trafficking. So for example, that case, the Queen against Kirk Allen, he took the boys from their home under the disguise that they were going to a football camp. Got parent consent slip, got the parents to sign consent slips, and he took them away. Unbeknown to the school did not have any knowledge of this. He had them on the streets begging right across the island. He had them in Clarendon, he had them in St. Catherine, he had them in St. Anne. Begging with, sometimes you pass on the streets and you see persons with like sponsorship sheets. Right, that's what he had them doing. And they would have to give him the money. So they were basically begging for his benefit. So they did not undertake any sporting activity. They didn't play any football, no nothing. They were just begging.
They were just begging and basically fattening his pockets. He just report and young and person who can play on the emotions of the older people and get them to shell out money. And
so one day when the children did not come home on time, the parents went to the school and seeking out information as to where are their children. And then the principal would have said to them that we're not aware of this. We have no knowledge of this. And that's when they made a report to the police.
It's like a really well thought out, sophisticated plan, if you ask me. I mean, yeah, and is this gentleman behind bars?
Yes, he is. He was convicted and sentenced.
All right, fantastic. That makes me feel very good in myself.
Right, so that's an example of trafficking, and that's what we tell persons, that trafficking can be labor exploitation, so that's forced labor or even domestic servitude.
Right.
As well as forced begging. So a lot of times we see persons on the streets begging. Some are just begging for whatever reason it is, but you also have forced begging, which is different from just begging. All
right. Talk to me about domestic servitude. First, let me just take a question from Jerome Brown online. It's a good question. He asked, are offenders registered? Do we keep track of these persons in any kind of way so we can know what's going on? And, it's, I guess, similar to, sex offenders or whatever. You want to be able to know that this person may have been convicted of this particular kind of crime, and so we know to keep an eye on that guy or something like that.
Yes, they're registered in the system. We also have an Angel Watch program where if is it that they would like to travel abroad, the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency will tell you that they have the list of those persons as well, as the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Fantastic. Now, let me ask you about domestic servitude in particular. I mean, like I said, we just like to explore the different forms that it takes. A person can have a better understanding and be more aware and that kind of thing. Talk to me about that, domestic servitude itself.
All right. So domestic servitude is basically when you have a person in your household, they're doing household work. So whether it is cleaning, cooking, washing, all the other things that comes with household work, and you're not paying that person, or you're paying the person very meager wage, which is barely below the minimum wage. As well as sometimes it also takes physical abuse. That person is sometimes physical abuse. So for example, we've had a case of a Haitian national in Jamaica where she was sexually exploited as well as she was subjected to domestic servitude. So she was taking care of the children within that household, and she was also taking care of the household. So she was cleaning, cooking, washing, and all the above. And that person was convicted. He's the appeal case. Case which was appealed last year, and they lost. So for example, we've had cases of domestic servitude in Jamaica, and I would like to touch on some type of culture in Jamaica. So sometimes we have persons coming from quote-unquote poor background, and they would sometimes send their child or children to a family member or to a friend, and in the hope that they will have a better life. Most times to urban cities or urban centers. So you say you come from country to town, and the aunt will send the child to school and give the child all the necessary things that child.
Taking care of the child. At least that's what they tell the parents when they're taking them, right?
Right. And the child is not being sent to school, and the child is just in the house doing all the household work. Parents not doing, or guardian not doing any of the work, and they're cleaning, they're cooking, they're sweeping yard, they're chopping the yard, and all the above. That's domestic servitude. All
right. So it's not nearly as culturally appropriate as we like to think. A lot of the time we just, I'll just take them man and we'll help you, and you send them to school, and it's like a trade-off, something like that.
Right. Children should be in school. So if is it that you'd like the child to help with household work, nothing is wrong with that. But the child should be going to school within school hours. So if you have the child at home not doing school any form of schooling, and you just have them doing all the household chores, and that's domestic servitude. It also includes adults as well. So it's not only children. Adults are subjected to domestic servitude as well.
Some persons who are brought over as foreign nationals, and rather than helping, you hear the stories, rather than promised all kind of opportunities, and they seize their passports, see their documents, and then just force them to do all manner of things.
Correct.
All right. Jaziel Clark has a very good question. He says, what's the plan to educate the public more about human trafficking and to safeguard the target? Thank you, Jaziel, again for your question. I appreciate your eyes and your interest. So I guess you want to know about some of the public education and awareness raising measures that the Secretariat and NatFatif have been undertaking over the years.
All right. So we've been undertaking a number of initiatives. For example, just recently we had our International Conference on Human Trafficking last year in July. That's in Trelawney, where we had over 7 international speakers speaking about human trafficking. We also had victims of human trafficking giving their stories about human trafficking and what it entails. We also had a distinguished lecture at the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, UCC, just this February, where over 200 students were trained and sensitized on human trafficking. Our plan is to embark on a national campaign on human trafficking, because we'd like to reach in every corner of Jamaica, and the rural areas. So, you know, a lot of times urban areas tend to get a lot of sensitization. But our plan this year is to reach all the areas, and as you know, 14 parishes are in Jamaica, and so we'd like to reach all the parishes everywhere in each parish on human trafficking. We've also embarked on our anti-trafficking persons clubs within schools.
In schools, yes.
Which we wish to launch that formally soon, and very soon. And these clubs is like an extracurricular club within schools. So we're targeting children because we know that child trafficking is a problem for us. And so we'd like to get children to be more aware of human trafficking, and so that they can spread also the word to their peers around them as well as adults. And so that is one of our initiatives. We have 10 schools so far on board, and they are right across the island. So it's not just centered in Kingston.
Right. Fantastic. As we know, crimes like these thrive where eyes are not, where people are not focusing. So it's very good that we try to spread the message as wide as possible, so we can make sure that everybody has some sense of awareness, so they can, as they like, spot them, stop them, and report them. Right?
Correct.
I mean, you brought some very wonderful visual aids, and we just want to get them on camera and show them. Talk to us about this DVD right here and what's going on with that.
So this is Rescue. This is our docudrama on human trafficking, and it highlights one form of trafficking, which is sexual exploitation. So, for example, this young girl, she was lured by a trafficker by befriending her. This is one of the form that we also spoke about, where the person befriended her and she trusts the person, and as soon as she developed a level of trust, he got her into a human trafficking ring when she asked for like an opportunity in which she could gain more money. So this is available on YouTube. You can watch our docudrama on YouTube. You can also look at it on our National Task Force Against Trafficking Persons website. That's our NatFatif website. It's available there, so you can click on it and watch it and be informed.
All right. And the calendar here, this looks like a very useful tool, especially for the youngsters, so they can get a better appreciation. Talk to me about this calendar and what it's meant to do and accomplish.
That's the aim. So the aim of our calendars, it was distributed in schools across the island. We've distributed over 20,000 calendars, and the aim of it is to help children, more so children below the ages of 13 years old, to recognize what is human trafficking. Because as we like to target adults, our children cannot be forgotten, as they are most times victims to human trafficking. And so this is a form of trafficking, which this is domestic servitude, like what we were talking about. So the calendar, it's a multifaceted calendar. So it's also can be used as a reading tool. So it's each month you have a part of the story, and the story is about Sean, who was subjected to domestic servitude by his aunt in Kingston. So he was sent by his mother to live with his aunt in Kingston, where she promised to give him a better life, send him to school, and we know.
I know the rest goes.
Right.
It didn't quite work out that way.
Correct.
I'm sure.
So we have the numbers there. You know, you can call all the numbers. It's stated right there to report a suspected case of trafficking.
I mean, it's an unusual question from Jerome Brown. But I'm going to ask it to you anyway and see how you respond. Says, what if you're accused of said offense? How do you mount a defense against false accusations? I can imagine, maybe if a person sees something and it raises suspicion and he calls the police and the police come, it might, raise a few eyebrows. So what do you do in a case like that? I don't know. I want to
As
tackle that
in,
one.
what the person do in a
What the
case
person
like
should
that?
do. Well, I mean, I want to ask that question because he asked it. He might have he might be wondering about how to react in case you're accused or falsely accused of this crime. Anyway.
I think the best way is to mount your defense. So you basically say, why is it that you're not a trafficker, or why is it that you haven't committed this crime?
There you
And
have
we
it.
know the other way is to get an attorney at
Right,
law.
exactly. There you have it, Jerome. So I
Safest
wanted
way.
I wanted to just make sure that Chenee answered your question so that you know what to do in case, you know. Now, let me ask you personally, what has this work meant for you? What have you seen in terms of Jamaica's own transformation with regards to how we treat this crime and how we move towards raising awareness and making sure that we are able to stop it and you know, basically do something about it and let persons feel more safe and secure in the country that we're putting an end to it?
All right, so this means a lot to me because I have a passion for human rights. And we know that human trafficking is a violation of human rights because all persons are entitled to their freedom. And human trafficking, what it does, it takes away a person's right to their freedom, as well as their right to their own free will. And so Jamaica has taken on what we call a victim-centered approach. So we've recognized that victims are most times, or the number one priority for us. Because while we are doing as much as we can to stop the crime, we have to protect our victims, for lack of a better word, because we wouldn't like a person to be re-traumatized or to go back into a life of human trafficking. And so very, very key in our legislation is that a victim cannot be prosecuted for acts committed while being trafficked. So if is it that it's acts committed against our immigration laws or acts committed against our sexual laws, for example, like prostitution, we've inputted that into the act, so victims cannot be prosecuted. As well as we've also embarked on a number of reintegration programs for our victims. So if is it that they need further education, we assist them to get further education. Or if is it that they need a skill, we assist them to garner a skill. So is it that they are more empowered when they leave human trafficking, when they leave a life of human trafficking, to go out and be citizens, or they can function.
Right, they can play a part in society and get back, try to rebuild their lives, so to speak.
Right.
So well, talking about that, children in particular, I mean, how do you work with them? Or is there what are some of the ways, I guess, that we're working with them to help them put that because I mean, at a young age, going through stuff like that can be tremendously traumatizing, and you know, how are we working about that and trying to find ways to help them to move forward with their lives, I guess?
So very important to note is that we have the Child Protection and Family Services Agency on our task force. So they play a critical role on our task force. So when a child comes to us as a victim of human trafficking, they would have to get counseling. The Victim Services Division as well is also on the task force, and they worked with children as well. So we worked with children, for example, we offer psychosocial support, and that can mean a range of things, which inclusive of counseling or rehabilitation, if it's that they need rehabilitation. We also assist them educationally, as I said before, if it's that they would probably need to change schools, and the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information is also a member on the task force. So all these entities on the task force, they are there for a reason, because if it's a child victim that comes to us, we have to find all the means and ways to protect this victim as well as to properly reintegrate them into society. All
right. Let me ask you, if persons are interested and they see the work that you're doing, they feel like they want to get involved or play a part, is there any way that they can link with you and connect and maybe lend a hand depending on whatever their resource or whatever their position is?
Right. Yes, they can. So on our website, we have a button that says volunteer now. They can click it. It's a blue button that's blinking. The form will pops up and
what's the website,
the
just to give persons an awareness of what that is?
Not for Tip. So it's Not for Tip. www.notfortip .gov.jm.
Right.
As well as if they visit the Ministry of Justice website, it will take them to our website as well. And to give a very short one, you can just visit us on Facebook, send us a message, and we can take it from there. As well as you can click the contact button. You know that contact button on Facebook? When you go on a page and you see contact us, when you click contact us, it takes you straight to our website.
All right.
So you can, easy for, modern persons, the young persons who that's like social media, and they're always on social media, so they can visit us there.
All right. Oh, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We are doing a lot. It's now, I mean, it's a heinous crime, and it's happening, and but we're not sitting on our laurels and just allowing it to. There's a national task force against trafficking in persons, and they've been doing a lot of work. As you heard Miss Russell say, we've been prosecuting a lot of persons. There have been a lot of wins, a lot of major wins that have been allowing us to put a real dent in this crime. I mean, efforts continue, but that's why we're glad to have persons like this dedicating themselves to this crime in particular, one that especially one that hurts our children. And I mean, that's something that's near and dear to my heart in particular, just to making sure that we're able to protect and provide for our children so they can grow and play their part in the country in a couple of years from now and that kind of thing. So I can really applaud you guys for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Once again, I want you to just go over the numbers that people can call if they see something and they want to make a report or something that raises a red flag for them so that they can contribute to the effort to keep this crime on the downswing.
All right. So the numbers to call are, as you can see here, it's 811. You can also call 1-888-PROTECT, and that's 776-8328. And this line is specifically for our children. You can also report other matters of trafficking, but this line is to report suspected activities for our children. So it's child victims. You can also call 119 for the nearest police station. And the other numbers for the anti-tip unit within the Jamaica Constabulary Force are 967-1389 or 922-3771.
I always like to drive home the significance of things like the penalty. What are some of the penalties that under the legislation that we can have persons convicted of if found to be participating in human trafficking? Because we want the persons to know, step into this world, this is what awaits you. Let them know.
All right, so some of the penalties includes, or the penalty includes, you can be sentenced up to a maximum of 30 years, and that's if aggravating factors are included within the case. And you can also be fined as well. So you can not only sentence, you can also be fined. So for example, our victims are entitled to restitution. So the prosecution can apply for restitution, or the victim can claim restitution within the case. So that's very important. So that's an example of why we say where we offer a victim-centered approach within Jamaica. Everything that we do is centered around the victims. And so the act entails fine or imprisonment. So you can also be fined or imprisoned, or you can be imprisoned and fined. We have fines up to $2.4 million. A human trafficker was fined. Right. So those are some of the penalties under the law. We've had persons get as much as 14 years under trafficking, and persons are also convicted for other offenses as well as human trafficking.
All right, as you can see, we're bringing the hammer down. Yeah, so don't get any ideas, Mr. Trafficker or Mrs. Trafficker, whichever
And very
you wanna
important to note as well, you can also be convicted of facilitating human trafficking. So not only human trafficking, persons can be convicted of facilitating human trafficking.
All right.
Which is an offense under our law.
All right. So last, I'm gonna just give the last word to you in terms of the objectives of the task force and the secretariat, I guess, going forward, so person can, have an idea of what you guys are up to right about now and what your short to medium term goals are going forward.
All right, so this is an opportune time to say in July we have Trafficking in Persons Week, and July 30th is known as World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. And so our short-term goal, you can look out for us within the last week of July. We will be embarking on a number of sensitization sessions across the island. We'll be doing outside broadcast for Trafficking in Persons Week in Jamaica. So you can look out for us. We will be launching also our anti-trafficking persons clubs in schools, as I said before. And you can also just look out for us more. As I said, we will be embarking like on a national campaign for trafficking. So we want persons to come on board. If you want to help us, we really appreciate the help. And that's our goal.
All right. Spot them, stop them. What's the last part?
Report
them. So we don't want any more human trafficking in Jamaica. We definitely, this is, I don't think I need to elaborate on why this is bad. This is this is as bad as it gets. But we thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to Mrs. Russell for coming in and sharing in all the work that the Secretariat has been doing, all the work that NATFATIP has been doing, which is the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons. They're out there, they're doing the work, they're on the front lines. If you want to call them and get in contact with them, they welcome it. If you want to, if you see something that's odd to you, as they said, you call 811, you can call 1-888-PROTECT. Or call 119 for your nearest police station, and a host of many others that you can find if you visit the Ministry of Justice's website, which is moj.gov.jm/stop human trafficking, or you can email natfatip at moj.gov.jm. So there are so many ways in which you can get involved, make a contribution. If it's even just seeing something and just calling the police, you've already made a step. Who knows, you might just have saved another child's life. Thank you again to Mrs. Russell. This was really a very, very, very enlightening conversation, and I hope that persons out there are influenced and impacted and they feel the need to get involved and stop human trafficking across the country. All right, and that's a good note to wrap on.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. We really do appreciate it. And if you sent in a question and we didn't get to answer it, not to worry. We'll be going back through afterwards and we'll be able to channel any questions that we personally can't answer. We can channel it to Ms. Russell or the Secretariat, and they can give you all information that you need. Now, remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. If there's anyone you'd like us to have in studio, let us know, and we'll try to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Jamaica Information Service, and I'll plug Ministry of Justice as well, and NATFATIP as well, so you can check them out online on all social media platforms. They're there, and you can get more information that you need. We typically do this on Thursdays, but this is a special Wednesday edition, and we had no problem because we felt this was an important enough topic to make sure that we got information out there. We do this live on Facebook, on the Jamaica Information Service Facebook page. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.